Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I went on the pill when I was 16 for acne. And I remember like my doctor, my OB told me, "Oh, you can skip the last week and then it'll just go straight to the next one and you don't have to have a period. It's fine." So I did that for like 5 years. I didn't have a period. I thought it was great. I was like, this is the best thing ever. I don't have to worry about getting pregnant. My acne is more cleared than normal. I still had gut symptoms, but I didn't make any connection to the birth control with my gut at the time. And so, yeah, I stayed on that. And then as I started to go more down the gut healing journey, I was like, all right, I want a more natural approach. I'm going to try to get off this medication and prescription. So I stopped taking that cold turkey. And then a few months later, I got on the copper IUD. And when I got off the birth control, I wasn't like the first one. I wasn't as in tune with my body as I am now. So the only like symptom that I really remember is I started breaking out like all over my body. Like I had acne on my back that was pretty bad, in my chest. And then, yeah, and so then I got the copper IUD and I had really, really heavy, painful periods, like bent over in pain, having to rely on ibuprofen at least a few times a month. And so I knew going into getting the copper IUD then that's a common side effect. And so I was like, you know what? It's worth it. I don't have to stress. Um, and so I put up with that for a few years. And then I had gone a little bit deeper down the functional medicine route. And I had a friend who she was already in the health world. She was a health coach. And she was like, hey, the copper IUD, like there's been a lot of things around that. Like I just kind of planting that seed. And so I remember I found this Facebook group. It was a Facebook support group for copper IUD toxicity. So I start reading everyone's post, and it was like crazy symptoms, like heart palpitations and like crippling anxiety, like I mentioned, and all these wild symptoms. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, I don't really have any of that, but my hair is falling out and my thyroid is low and all these things, these other small things were happening. And so I was like, you know what? I remember I asked the universe, I was like, show me a sign if I need to get my copper IUD out. And like literally 3 minutes later, I saw like all these numbers in a sequence and I was like, all right, I'm getting it out. So the next week, made an appointment, got it removed. And what is crazy about the copper IUD is I felt amazing for like 3 or 4 weeks after. And I'd already cut out all these inflammatory foods. I was doing this like 30-day cleanse. I was going to cold plunges and breath work and weightlifting and all these things combined. And it wasn't until like a month after I got the copper IUD removed that I crashed. Like it was kind of sudden where I started experiencing like really, really intense brain fog and like I couldn't think clearly. And I felt like it was what I describe it now as like dark night of the soul, spiritual awakening. Like it was crazy. My thoughts were very existential. I was like, I could like feel other people's energy. Like it was really weird. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. So I was trying to figure it out. And meanwhile, my naturopath that I was seeing didn't really know what copper toxicity was. And I was like, here, there's thousands of people in this Facebook group that are going through all of these things. Like clearly there's a connection there. And they're like, nah. And so, months later, doing my own research, listening to tons of podcasts. By then I had started I have a lot of clients through Instagram. So I was sharing a lot about my journey there and people were reaching out and being like, oh, I had the same experience. And after I got the IUD removed, I had the same thing. But then, I felt better after like years later. And so I put two and two together with where my hormones were at. And then we can talk about this more, of course, but people think the copper IUD is non-hormonal, but it affects your hormones because copper can increase estrogen. And anytime you're putting a foreign object in your body for a long period of time, it's going to cause a lot of inflammation, especially in the womb area, which is very sensitive. And so that's, I think, a lot of where my issues were stemming from, but also knowing that it's not just one thing, right? Like it's never just one thing. And that's why people think like, oh, I got my IUD out and I'm fine. And then you have someone like me that got their copper IUD out and all these other issues started coming to the surface. And it became this like thing that I couldn't ignore anymore. And so a lot of that had to do with the amount of toxins I had built up in my body, parasites. I think I was also living in mold at that time. So like I said, everything was compounded together.